Hello, welcome to StackGenius, the podcast for GPs and LPs that want to create alpha with technology. My name is Sylvan, and I greet you from Berlin. I hope you have a fabulous day wherever you are. Today, I'm also joined by Martin, who I think is in Hungary right now. Are you on vacation or what are you doing in Hungary?
No, I'm just on the at a side of the lake. Basically, it's like much better to be here with during the summer when you have kids. It's just very hard to be in the city. So I usually kind of try to stay near some like interesting location.
That's fabulous. It sounds really good. And you're working with Flashpoint. So tell me about Flashpoint and also where you usually live.
Yeah, so Flashpoint is an alternative asset manager that has three products actually: venture capital, venture debt, and secondary. We manage roughly $450 million, basically investing in companies in Europe and Israel, and these companies usually sell to the U.S. and Western Europe. Basically, our thesis is that we think that there is great talent in these regions, and then this great talent can actually create very good companies, and then we're hoping to invest in those good companies.
Sounds great. And where are you located, by the way?
Usually located in Budapest, Hungary.
Right, right. So, I mean, I'm super excited about today because you actually agreed to show us a lot of the really cool things that you have built at Flashpoint. Um, you have built a lot of technology. You're using some off the shelf, but also built some cool little hacks, I think, and also some big hacks that are exciting. When did you start with a journal? Why did you decide to build things?
Yeah, I joined the Flashpoint in 2017, and basically, as a lot of VCs at the time, were using spreadsheets to basically manage most of the operations. And I had a background in sales. I worked in Doc Planner, leading the Hungarian sales of Doc Planner. And then during that time, I became familiar with CRMs and like how we can actually manage processes, sales-like processes in a more efficient way. And I thought that this, VC, being a VC is like exactly like being a salesperson. So, you can adopt basically most of the methodologies one-to-one to this use case. So, when I joined after that, I think like half a year after that, we started to implement the CRM first. And then we consciously chose a CRM that is API first, so that we can use it as sort of the backend knowledge base of like everything that we do at Flashpoint. And, over time, we managed to build a pretty substantial like tech stack, mostly focused around our CRM, which is actually HubSpot, plus also the databases that we use in parallel with that.
Mhm. And is it only you personally who built that? Did you have a team? How does this work?
I started out alone, basically. I, have some knowledge of coding. During the years, I realized that everything in life basically can be enhanced if you know a little bit of code. So we're mainly working with computers, and computers operate with code. So if you know how to do code, you can actually enhance most of your processes. But over time, we actually hired some like full stack engineers. So currently, we have a full-time employee of like two full-time employees, full stack engineers. We started to hire them in 2019. So
Mm.
I can say like I did the MVPs myself, and then basically they were like a little bit more professionalized by the team we have. But I still act as the product manager for coming up with new ideas and directing the way that we work there.
I mean, I don't want to unmask any internal conversations that you might have had, but one of the challenges that many forward-thinking investors have, that not every other partner, GP, is of the same opinion that these investments make sense. How was it for you guys? So did you have to overcome skepticism if these things can be built?
Sure. I mean, like everyone is, if you're used to doing business one way, then it takes a significant sort of um, change in mindset to basically understand that there is another way. I think we are lucky in a sense that everyone in Flashpoint is very much open minded, and the way that we work changes so much that we can understand that basically any tool or any process that enhances this is beneficiary for the company. And since we have many locations, I mean, the headquarters is in London, but we have, as you mentioned, I'm in Budapest. We have offices in Warsaw, Riga, New York, Tel Aviv. It's a pretty broad location. We need to rely on digital tools to basically help our work, because otherwise it's just not going to work. It's just very hard to manage. And so I think it's all about results and also resiliency within the organization. So if you're bringing results and if you're resilient enough, then you can actually make change. And then if people see that what you're building is useful, they'll start using it. And once there is an adoption within the company, it's very easy to get resources for that.
Mm. I mean, listening to you, it sounds like you just went ahead, did it, and showed that it can be done. And then 2 years later, I think, right, you started hiring staff into that. So, yeah.
Pretty much. So I can tell you some anecdotes, like when we first used this um, spreadsheat to manage the CRM. I myself actually started to use HubSpot back then as well, and I created an export that reformatted everything that I did in the format that was required for that specific spreadsheet. So
Hmm.
like I basically adopted the technology to fit the existing technology, and then slowly we actually all started to use the CRM. And then pretty much with any other tool that we used, it was like people were saying like, okay, so you're doing it a little bit differently than we do. How is that? And I'm like, well, look, it's you. If you do it like this, it actually is a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient. Like, okay, it's actually pretty easy and pretty cool. So let's start to use it.
I mean, in preparation, I did see a couple of the things that you built, and I think they're amazing. So I can see how you convince people quickly. So yeah, maybe let's zoom out for a few clicks and look at what did you build hacks for. So is it more on the productivity side? Is it more on the analytics side? So which kind of things did you build?
I like to look at it in sort of like a more holistic way, basically saying that there are only a handful of processes that you need to do as a VC. First, you need to screen, then you need to select, then you need to analyze, then you need to do sort of the investment, and then you need to do the portfolio management. And plus, in connection with all of this, there's also the LP side of things. So you need to kind of get the money for yourself as well. And so we basically try to automate or like sort of enhance all of these processes, and there are various tools for the various processes. So for LP management, we're using a third party solution. For portfolio management, we're using sort of in-house solutions. For sourcing and selecting, we're using a combination of like third party plus in-house tools. So it's all like mix and match. But yeah, I mean, I think where most of the value is added, there's always like some part which you can't and shouldn't automate, I believe,
Mm.
because that's like where the magic happens, right? That's the value add, basically. I think the parts that you should and want to automate are the ones that are sort of like mundane tasks, right? Like nobody wants to scour databases for hours looking for like one thing that could and should be automated. So like most of the database providers make their databases in a way that you need to spend significant time on their site to basically find what you're looking for. Well,
You're
in
talking about the
reality, this is
deal
just,
rooms and crunch bases, or what do you mean
yeah, the
exactly? Yeah.
Crunchbase, PitchBooks, and deal rooms of the world. I mean, if you're looking for something specific, um, they're basically just like glorified database management systems, right? Like, but you can't do as complex queries as you could with like SQL, for example, because it just like the interface just doesn't allow. Also, most of the time downloads are limited. So if you have your own way of analyzing data, you won't be able to do that on a database like that, right? So this is where like having an API connection to these databases helps a lot, and then you can have your own sort of view or controller part, and then you can actually do more in-depth analysis. So I think this was the first realization that we came to, that look, it's like actually the very first realization was that when it's good that you have a CRM, but what about when you're like being shown a website, right? What you then need to do is to kind of copy the website, paste it into your CRM, search for that, try to, also there are many duplicates, right? Try to like kind of understand which
Mm.
one is the right one, and then try to go through all the communications and understand like, oh, actually, did we actually talk to these guys or not? Right? And so when it comes to working um, um, with a, how do you call it, like a conference, then it actually gets even more complex, right? So you have a bunch of companies that you want to talk to, and a bunch of them that you need to understand where it comes. So that was the first realization that, look, let's actually build a tool that takes the URL of a company, pings the API of HubSpot, and then gets you back all the info that you want, like right on the screen, so that you don't need to move to HubSpot and back. So that was like the first tool that we built. It's called the multi-tool, just because it kind of does multiple things for us. But the
Your
first one
Swiss
is,
Army knife.
yeah, that's actually true. So it is really a Swiss Army knife. And
Should we
so,
look at that together? I mean, it's probably really cool for people
sure,
to see that. All
yeah,
right.
let's do that. So let's say you're on a website. This is Chili Piper for like demonstration purposes, one of our portfolio company. So you open the multi-tool, like either clicking here, or there's like a keystroke as well. And so what it does is that it like shows you all the information that you need to know about it. Like this, we looked at this company with our VC team. As you remember, we have 3 products. Last contacted a month ago. It's a portfolio company, current action. Obviously want the company to succeed. And then, all the rest of the stuff here, all the various links to the various database providers, also similar link, similar web, and where the company is established, when it was founded, when was the last funding it received, how much it actually received in total, who are the investors, and then just analytics, right? So you have like the current amount of employees that they have, what's the 3 months and 12 months growth. This is like a proxy for like short-term and long-term growth. And then you have website visitors, and then also short-term and long-term growth. And then the very interesting thing is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we want to actually look at people that are from like Europe and Israel. So we have this like expert recognition tool that will allow us to basically look through the founders and then identify their names and the universities that they attended and the languages that they speak, and tell us whether they're like a fit, right? So this allows
Mm.
us to basically uncover hidden expat talent. Like in this case, there was Alina, who is one of the co-founders, who is actually Romanian, and this is a match to our sort of thesis, and then this allowed us to invest. So this,
Can we can we pause there for a few more seconds? So,
sure.
because I think it's super exciting. So, you're enriching. I see deal room there. So that's where you get some of the traction data from. What else are you enriching from? Where?
Well, we're using deal room to basically get a large part of the info. So
Mhm.
this all of it is coming from deal room. Also, the analytics part is coming from deal room. We looked at various providers, and then basically Durum provides you with a pretty cost-efficient solution for getting the employee data as well. Versus,
Mhm.
we looked at a bunch of other tools, but this ended up being the most cost-efficient. These
That's
ones
cool.
are mostly being uh, driven by LinkedIn scraping, which is done in this case by proxy curl, and then there are some
Mm.
other sort of like APIs that we use to get the sort of like name and origin check. There is
Mm.
some like first party, like stuff that we developed ourselves that kind of helps us to get this information. And then for the first part, it's just like HubSpot data. It's pretty straightforward, just HubSpot API.
And the sidebar slash plugin, how did you build that? Is that off the shelf somehow?
Not really. It's just it's React based with using basically just a boilerplate React sidebar
Mm.
template, and then just like styling it basically according to our needs. There is also a settings part of it, and it kind of like it shows your LinkedIn intro text, because the reason why it's called the multi-tool, because you can use it for multiple things. I mean, there's a use case for this where you go on a person's LinkedIn profile, and it like helps you to send a connection request much easier. So you
Mhm.
can set the sort of like the text for that. You see there's like a first name sort of like a thing that you can
I
like
saw
plug
it.
in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
uh, so, so yeah, and then the other thing to mention with this one is that it actually allows our scouts also to work with it. So there is a different version for like venture scouts, that when it shows you the same information, but when there is like when the company is not on HubSpot, so I can show you like the bbc.com. This is what I usually show it on, so that this is not on HubSpot, right? So you can actually add it to HubSpot straight from here, right? And then if you were a scout, you would see something like send it to HubSpot, send it to Flashpoint, and then you would have another tab which like lists all the investments or potential investments that you sent to us. So it becomes sort of in one go, it becomes not just like a useful help tool, but also like an operating system for the venture scouts as well.
Can you speak about Venture Scouts for a second? Because I know that you also built a little bit of tech there. What are Venture Scouts for you? What's the activity there?
Yeah, venture scouts are basically a good way for us to um, tap into the local sort of startup ecosystems with like people on the ground. So what we do there is basically allow people to help us discover companies to invest in for a commission. You can get a commission either after we do a deal or either if you send us a qualified lead. This is a pretty good opportunity for people that are not actually VCs yet, but want to break into VC, or they don't want to break into VC, but they have a lot of friends that are creating, good companies. I can like show you, you can
Please.
explore more about the Venture Scout program on our website, where there is a bunch of text and a bunch of information. And as you can see, it actually uses our multi tool as well to do the communication. You can also apply to be a scout. It's a pretty easy application process. And another thing that we're pretty proud of is that we thought that venture scouts are actually such a great invention, because it helps us to really like have connections, like good connections to founders in locations where we'd not necessarily could do it ourselves. I mean, we're a small team of like, let's say, investment members for the VC team. We're like 8 people, and then we have various other teams, but not more than like 20 people for the whole company. And so it's impossible for you to have a strong enough network in all the locations. And so it's actually very good to have scouts, because they can help us to get an introduction to founders where we would probably not have like a mutual connection always, right? So you can actually click to become a scout, and if you fill out this form, I can do like a dummy request for you, um, and then I can show you the backend how it looks. It will actually be quite just do something. I'm not sure if this actually needs like a proper URL. It should need one actually. So I submit the request, and then immediately you should see it basically in our backend popping up. You see, this is the one I did already. And so the only thing I need to do, well, first of all, if I gave like a proper LinkedIn account, which I'm not sure if I did, but if I did, it would basically auto enrich the information based on that LinkedIn account. Uh, Auto enrich a lot of things. First of all, like the country, city, the followers, education, whether the university I went to is like a good university or not. It should happen it's not instantaneous, but it happens quite fast. So this allows us to immediately overview who are the applicants. So you see that we have people that have 14,000 followers. We have people that have 10,000 followers, and this like is a good proxy for like the quality of the network that those
So
people
we will
have.
know how many followers you have in a second.
Yeah, it's like
If the
9 point
enrichment is done.
something thousand. Yeah. And then the only thing I need to do is basically review the person, and if I think that they could be a good fit, I qualify them. And then once I hit qualified, I basically an automated like system already will send me an email pretty soon. You see, it already switched to video send. So if I now go to my emails, uh, I will basically be able to show you, hopefully.
And while you're doing that, the enrichment how did you build the enrichment into Google Sheets?
The enrichment, I mean, for some reason, because it actually went to my other account. Sorry, I gave like another. The enrichment itself is actually built on top of Google Sheets. See, Venture Scout application form is here. And then I should basically, if I go to all mail, I should see the email, or maybe I made a mistake in the email. Let's see. It's the beauty of live demos.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Well,
I mean,
anyway,
we
let's
understand that
allow
the
let's
email
allow
was
like
sent.
some minutes. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what I wanted to show is that it's not just the email, but actually there are like buttons built in the email, so you can
Mhm.
like with the click of a button, basically just like go through the process and then just like receive your term sheet and sign the term sheet. Let's say within like 5 to 10 minutes of applying, right? So what this means is that you can actually build a system that you can like have venture scouts at scale. So that like is a very useful tool for us. We select the right people, but that it doesn't take like the administration part actually doesn't take very long. How we built it is actually using the built-in functions of Google Sheets and Google Forms. So you see like this is a Google form. It lands the applicants here, and I don't, it's not a very common knowledge, but basically you can actually modify even the arrival page of like where form information lands. So you can actually build stuff on top. So you don't need like a separate sheet. And this is actually the thing where it lands, and then it will Google Sheet will know which are the columns that it actually gets from the form, and then it will kind of work around that. So any enrichment that is done, it can be placed anywhere within the form information, and it will work pretty seamlessly. And then once you do that, basically you can automate the other parts as well. And then the other parts are being automated with NA10, which is sort of our no-code backend server, which is something that I can also talk
Yeah.
about.
Tell us more
more
about
deep.
that. I would love to hear.
So NA10 is basically a no-code backend server that we're using for backend. We used the Node.js before, but as you build more and more workflows, it becomes much harder for people to understand. That's one, and the second one is that the more complex a server gets, the more it also needs to be about load balancing, parallel processing, and a
Right.
lot of other technical stuff. And so we wanted to choose a provider that would allow us to really manage all of that, like in the background. And then we ended up
Just half
using
a second for the audience. So N8N is the software vendor, the no-code interface that you can build the workflows on, right?
Yes. So it's very similar to Zapier, but it actually is a little bit more tailored towards more complex use cases. So probably the audience is familiar with Make.com, Zapier, and similar tools. The big difference between I'd say Zapier. So Zapier is like the most basic one, and then you have Make.com, which is a little bit more advanced, and then you have N8N that is even more advanced to the point where you can actually host it on your own server to use it. And then why it's good is because it actually has a lot of built-in connectors to most of the common tools, right? So if you have if you have tools, I want to show you one where we're using like pre-made integrations. So let's say here you're using HTTP requests, you're using routers, you're using looping, you're using like webhooks and all of that stuff. And much of the authentication part is actually handled by N8N. So what it means is that you don't need to actually build the OAuth modules and all of that, but it's being managed by N8N. So essentially what it means is that even a user that doesn't understand how to program can't actually can actually do a script and then can build tools to itself. So we're actually opening this to other parties of the team as well. So if they have a good idea, they can like program it themselves. Um, so you see like there is like a Postgres node here. There's like an HTML5 node here, and so on and so on. So if I wanted to add, if I wanted to create a workflow, I can just like start, and then it actually can act as a webhook as well. So we can actually build APIs with n8n as well, which is what we do with most of our tools. So we're using it basically as a sort of like an API first server, and then you're the only thing that we're coding in the various tools that we're building are API calls, right? So you actually don't need to worry about the database management and all of that, because everything is managed by n8n. So you can do a webhook call, you can do reliance on other apps, or you can also do manually. There are like some workflows that we need to only run manually. So and this is pretty useful because you can overview the data. There is you can actually use the built-in Chrome debugger to debug the data. So very, very useful tool. Highly recommended.
It's super cool. I've never worked with it actually, so we'll definitely have a closer look. And I do understand the no-code visual element of this. I understand that you have canned APIs that help you with the updates of the APIs. And how often do workflows break? What's the maintenance effort that you guys have to invest?
Very good question. I mean, everything breaks under certain load. So the various tools, we design them with the intention that they're being used for like specific use cases, but not with the intention that they will be like mass used. So whenever there is like, we had situations where we needed to analyze, let's say like 10,000 companies, obviously everything breaks, mostly because of API rate limits for the various providers. Like HubSpot has rate limits, and other tools have rate limits as well. So so you need to kind of work around that, mostly by batching stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I understand now what you use for this. The database underneath is just Postgres, or what are you doing?
Yeah, it's Postgres. We ended up choosing. Well, we're using Postgres, but we're if we want to do like compute on top, we have Snowflake as well, which
Hmm.
we use for like doing like complex calculations much faster. I mean, Postgres by itself is a great database, but the compute layer of it, unless you're like a master of SQL, it can actually get very slow, and then it can clog the database to the point where it becomes unusable for other use cases. So obviously, we're not a huge tech company. We're not optimizing for extreme load. So what we want to have is like a database that is reliable enough for our use cases, but also is like cost efficient enough so that like IT is not our core operation. It's like something that helps us in doing our core job, which is investing. So we need to be cognizant of that. But Postgres is a great database because it can store structured and unstructured data at the same time. We ended up going Postgres versus like MySQL or similar databases, just because it can also handle JSON data pretty well, which a lot of the APIs are JSON outputted. So
Very cool. No, I mean, let's maybe change gears a little bit. So now we talked about tech and backend and workflows a little bit, but also I know that you have quite a few productivity hacks. So you told me before that you're able to easily enrich URLs of companies with more data. So how does that work? What did you build there?
yeah, so as I mentioned, one of the first things that we wanted to build is basically a way for us to be more efficient at and more effective at conferences. So we built a tool also in Google Sheets, which is called the distro. And so what it does is that it takes a bunch of URLs that you can have in one of the columns, and then with the click of a button, it will request very similar information to you that you have in the sidebar, but like in one sheet, right? So this is pretty useful, and as you can see, it's already working. It's pretty useful because let's say you have 200 companies and you need to understand where to focus your efforts. And that can be actually a very tough task. It really depends how you're preparing for conferences. A lot of people are not preparing very thoroughly. But if you really want to do a good job, well, I just know that like a lot of people just go there and like go with the flow. But like if you want to make if you want to like do a good job and basically maximize your chances of finding, whatever you're seeking, that can be an investment, that can be a partnership or whatever,
Hmm.
then it like really like helps you. So as you can see, it like got the data for all of these companies. It helps to understand like when the last funding was received. Let's say like Fiscally, for example, just received an investment from Verdane, and you can see the various various like lead statuses that we have with the companies. Like we said, there's 3 products, so all the 3 products have lead statuses. One company can be like too late for the VC, then too early for VD, and then something else for the secondary fund. So you need to manage like all 3 of them. We can also understand when did we last talk to the company. That is a good proxy for where to actually focus your efforts. So you have a company that you talked to 2 years ago. That's probably like a good thing to catch up with. And then you have the links to HubSpot. So if you want to have an easy overview of the company, you can just click on that link and then kind of comes to HubSpot, and then helps you to really get a deeper understanding.
Oh,
And
that's
then
good.
total funding. Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
this clearly boosts productivity because the donkey work you have to do less of. So, how much effort was it to build this? Would you estimate? Was it in man weeks, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I built an initial version of this in Google Sheets, like programmed it entirely in Google Sheets. And then, like I mentioned, the 2 guys that we hired, they reprogrammed it so that it uses an A10. It's a little bit more stable and hangs a little bit less.
Hmm.
Uh, and then, I would say it's probably like 2 weeks of work or something like that. But it is pretty useful, and especially pretty useful if you have a list from somewhere, which happens very often. Like, hey, there's like an article like top whatever 100 companies of whatever, and then previously you would hand this over to an analyst who would manually go through and understand whether we have talked to or what's the status with each. And now what you can do is just like dump it here, and then it will give you like everything, and then you can easily highlight which ones you want to talk to. So
Absolutely. I mean, I can clearly see how this is efficient. Did you ever do an analysis how much time it took an analyst to do 100 companies and versus the time you invested in building this? It's fine if you say no. I was just interested if you have
Yeah,
data.
but I don't think we that when we didn't do that. But I know from experience that like going through 100 companies properly, like really understanding whether it's interesting, it's like at least a day, right? So and with this one, it can be done in like a couple of minutes.
Exactly.
So
So I mean, the amortization is very fast, right? If it took you 2 weeks to build this, I mean, how often do you have to go through hundreds of companies? Very often, right? You go to a lot of
yeah,
events. So,
exactly. Well, but it's not just events, but you can also like what happens very often is that you like have a conversation with the VC, and then you go on their website, and then you
mm,
basically want to understand like how like what are the good companies that they have. And I mean, there are various methods to do that, but one of the methods is just like scrape their website, hopefully get the URLs. But by the way, this actually works without URLs as well. It's just like working with names. It's
oh,
less reliable, but it works with names as well. URLs are more of a straight match, but it works with names as well. And it also works with investors, right? So a lot of the times you want to talk to investors at an event, so you can flick this switch, and it will understand that what you're looking for are actually investors, and it will give you different kind of headers like AUMs, last fund launch, star portfolio companies, and so on and so on. And so
I see.
that like really helps you to understand whether this is a good potential interesting partner for you or not.
Great. In preparation, I learned you also built a little tool for LinkedIn. So what's that about?
Yeah, we have some tools, and I just wanted to show you here. So one of the tools that we're using is a company called Linked Hub. And then with Linked Hub, what you can do is you first of all you can sync a profile to HubSpot. So that's what I did here with your profile, and then all the conversation that we have. If I go to your HubSpot profile in our CRM, I'll see that as notes. So this is great because like all of the team can understand what the conversation with the specific person was, and this is very helpful to create transparency across the team. The other cool tool that we built is, let's say, I have a person that I want to reach out to, but I don't know anything. I'm not like connected to them, and basically, I want to get in touch with them. And this happens a lot, right? When you're reaching out to companies, and it's a pretty cumbersome thing. You're kind of looking at their profile, grabbing their company, whatever. So we built this. It's part of the multi-tool I showed you earlier. So we built this like fast connect button, which like pre-populates basically personalized invite based on the text that you selected and based on the name, and then you can just send it to this person, and it like helps you to save a little time. So this is very useful. There are various other LinkedIn automations we tried. Like you can do like sequencing on LinkedIn. You can do.
Now the sound is gone. We cannot hear you anymore. You're muted right now. Martin, you're muted. Oh, you're gone.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, my
No, you.
headphones died. Switch to the other one.
All
So
right.
over time, basically, all the like there is such a thing as over automation, and using various tools like we use the tools like Phantom Buster, and
Mm-hmm.
then Lampod, and some others, Lamlist, Lampod, some others. It's very easy to go like to overdo these tools, right? Because you will have rogue automations going out to people that you had conversations with another on another channel, and it's like the more like AI tools are being added to outbound, the more it's gonna become very good to actually do it manually,
Yeah,
because
noisy. Yeah.
yeah. So the more tailored you are, the better it is.
Great. So one other thing that I was impressed by is the cohort builder that you guys have built. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's actually something that's one of my personal favorites.
Me
So this
too.
I built
I love it as well.
completely myself. So this is a very interesting one. So what we usually do is we have a conversation with a company, and I can like demonstrate it on your profile. So let's say I have a conversation with you, and what I'll do then is I'll like send you an email, and then the email I will send you is basically just like a template, and then I'll like send you this template, and then what this does is that it has this like link to a spreadsheet, but like a specific link which actually is like a copy link, so you're not accessing the original spreadsheet but only a
Mhm.
copy to it. So I send it to you, and then your only task is to basically fill it, uh, especially this like data part here. So what you do is you fill it with your customers. It can be anonymized, we don't mind actually. And then the on the top there is the dates, right? So you want to fill it with the revenues getting that you're getting from each customer on a monthly basis, and that's it basically. And then based on that, on the launchpad you will see some statistics about a company, about the customers. So you will, based on, you can tier it as well, you can turn it on and off, like there's a client segmentation part, and you're selecting tiers here. You're putting in something, and then it will like change this underlying statistics. You want to make sure that the tiers are set in a way that it makes sense. Then you add a couple of other things like the gross margin and the last 3 months sales and marketing spend. And then when you click launch, it basically automatically generates all of these other sheets for you. And then the most useful sheet, in my view, is this overview sheet. So what this overview sheet does is that it tells you, based on your ARPA or based on your ACV, what kind of animals you're hunting for. This is like a pretty cool model, concept model that was created by Christoph Jans from Point Nine, and I like it very much because it kind of
Mm.
gives you focus on like, are you actually in the right bucket to kind of shoot for the right type of customers, and are you actually using the right customer acquisition methods to shoot for the right customers, and more so from the perspective of customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value, right? So what this tool does is that it actually automatically generates your cohorts, your MRR cohorts, your logo cohorts or customer cohorts, so the number of customers that you have. And this is very useful because it allows you to like easily identify patterns in your data, and not just in your sort of like main data, but also in the tiered data, right? So what happens a lot of the times is that, let's say, tier one customers are the best customers, the highest paying customers. They have very good retention data, while like tier three customers, for example, have very bad retention data, right? And so that can mean that the company overall is just attracting a bunch of non-ICP clients. And so it's a strategic call to basically get rid of those ICP clients and focus only on the large ICP clients, and then you will have a very good company. And then based on these cohorts, especially based on the MRR cohorts, you can calculate a lifetime value from the cohorts itself, which is the most precise lifetime value that you can ever have. And then this lifetime value is then being fed back to the this overview tab. And so you can see that we're like triangulating the lifetime value based on the very basic like logo churn based LTV, which is going to be a higher amount, and the more precise cohort based LTV, which is based on the actual data, and it's capped at like 4 years, because you have 3.8 years, in this case 3.8 years of actual data. You're like rounding it up to 4 years, so you're capping it at 4 years. Usually it's not worth counting with more than like 4 or 5 years, because by that time it's like there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And so here you see that the LTV to CAC is like 1.4. So if you're triangulating, you're averaging these two amounts, you're getting to an amount that will yield like 1.4 LTV to CAC, which is not a very high number. So that shows you that this company is probably overspending on marketing, or like not finding the right customers. And then also there are various other numbers to look at, like NDR, for example, is 113%, while the ARR growth is like only 95%. So what it means is that it will probably have some kind of a problem in the numbers. Here, I'd say it's probably like just lower growth in general, because you're losing actually more customers than your like NDR. So a lot of like interesting things. All of these numbers are being generated as like proper SaaS metrics as well. So like new MRR, new logos, and so on. And then from those metrics, there are charts that are being generated as well automatically. So you can like very easily overview like, okay, so this company had very nice growth until some point, and then actually the growth started to subdue. And then most of the MRR, a large part of the MRR is coming from like expansion MRR, which is, it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. You also want to look at like how it actually generates new logos, whether it's consistent enough, or whether there are like some patterns of like seasonality or so on. And then you can look at like how the overall ARPA is growing. Is it growing fast enough? How is the monthly churn? How is the net dollar retention, and sort of like logo retention as well? And then also like trying to understand what's the customer mix. So here you can see that they initially sold to very small customers, and then slowly added larger customers, and then larger customers are becoming a large part of their revenue mix, but actually only a small part of the customer mix, right? So pretty helpful tool. Then there is also another tab which looks at customer concentration. So it kind of like ranks the customers, and then helps you understand like, the top 10 customers generate what percent of MRR, top 20 customers generate what percent of MRR. And you want to see a customer concentration that is not like extremely high. It really depends on the type of company, but this is a good check to kind of understand. And then finally, as just like a little helper tool, there is like a small model here that you can fill with the actual numbers, and it will like calculate you a good like three statement model for you to understand whether the general direction is of the company is like good enough. Obviously, all of what I'm like showing you is only relevant at like Series A and beyond. It's not really applicable to seed, but for that, it's actually pretty helpful.
I'm in love with this. I really like it actually. And how long did it take you to build this?
Yeah, this was pretty long, so I think I spent like a couple of months on it. But it's not really like So this is a tool that was, you see, this is V2 already, and I think currently this is not a stable version just yet. So we're using like V1.3 or something like that.
Hmm.
So as we're using it and we're seeing that there are more things that we could add to this tool, we're adding more features. So, you know, previously there was no overview tab, there were no charts, there were only like the cohorts, and then I added the LTV calculation. You could even like modify this LTV calculation by creating longer term forecasts and then doing discounts for those. And then there are a bunch of other things that you could add. Previously, it didn't do like reactivation MRR, which is a pretty complex formula. I
Hmm.
think the big specialty about this tool is that it's entirely coded in Google Sheets, but it's also done in a way that it's not just like giving you the output, but it actually does the calculation in Google Sheets as well. So what I mean by that is that the code is written in a way that if I want to check how the MRR cohorts are being calculated, I can just go here and it actually gives me the formula. It doesn't just give me the end number. Why this is super useful is because I can always trace it back. So if there is something that looks weird, like, okay, this looks weird, is it like 50% of the revenue is like being lost? So I can just check like what's the data here, and so I can see like, okay, so this was 2,000 and it actually got down to 1,000. This is not that bad, right? So it could have been that it's like, I don't know, 10,000 and it got to 5,000. So, and then this one I can also trace it back because this is a pivot table. So I can always like check, okay, which data did it take? I can always like, just as you could do it with like an Excel model, there is always like visibility inside of the data so that you can understand where everything is coming from. And this was much harder to code it this way because you needed to work with relative formulas in the code itself. So I can like show you the code part of it. You needed to work with like relative formulas in the code itself, but it was worth it because it really like allows you to have like a much better overview. So yeah, this is like 4 or 5 different codes here.
I
So yeah.
mean, in my head, I'm thinking about the less technical people in the audience who probably go like, "Oh, geez, I'm not going to start this." I mean, there is tools out there that are doing similar things as a software vendor. One of it is Causal. I don't know if you ever came across them. I actually really like their product. It's going in a very similar direction and also auto calculates a lot of these things. But coming back to this for you guys, so on the business side of this, so I mean, you have to be probably, are you prior or after term sheet on this detail level with the Series A companies? I mean, they wouldn't give you the data, right? Even anonymized.
Um, and well, it's actually pre-term sheet. I mean, there is no way for you to understand like the level of the dynamics of the company. We don't like to give term sheets and then pull them back, right? And then if you don't have this kind of data, it's very hard for you to understand the quality of the revenues. So the way that we want to give term sheets is that we're actually doing the deal, right? So I mean, that's why I'm saying that it's most of the time anonymous. But to be
Oh
honest,
yeah,
like
that's
in
true.
my view, that if you're a founder that doesn't have anything to hide, then you can give the data. I mean, there is nothing. What am I going to do with this data? I mean, if you have an awesome product with an amazing revenue curve and like retention curve and whatever, there is nothing to hide there, right? In my experience, the people that are more like sort of cagey about data are the ones that don't actually have good data. So and then they're being a little bit more cagey about it. It's
What's the
really, I
founders
know
what's the
it's
founders feedback on this? So do they feel um, that you're quite diligent, or do they have the same experience with other VCs?
yeah, we probably need to ask the founders that, but I think a lot of people like this tool once they understand how it works. I mean, obviously it's not a commercial tool, so it's a little bit clunky, a little bit more clunky than like a commercial tool. But I know founders that actually took this tool and started to use it for their own analysis. Like monthly, they run it, and then they have an understanding of their own metrics. As you said, there are Causal, there's Barometrics, there's Maxio, there's a bunch of other tools that you can use for this if you only have one company. So this one's specifically built for someone that like comes from the outside in and tries to peek in, and basically only needs like a couple of data points. So like most of this data should be readily available for most founders. If it's not, then it also is kind of a
Signal.
telltale sign for us. Yeah, it's like, you're not diligent enough with your data. And most of it, and full disclosure, we're doing B2B startups, right? So there you probably have, at this stage, you probably have like, let's say 150, 200 customers. This doesn't really, like this tool itself, it doesn't really work with like 2000 or whatever companies, because it just doesn't allow, it just cannot handle the amount of data. This type of data transformations, where you need to take this and then summarize it, and then calculate percentages from it and whatever, it's pretty compute heavy. So very hard to, like, within spreadsheets, like we're probably like doing whatever we can, like doing it to the maximum capacity for the tool itself. But if you were to do this in like Node.js or Python, you would probably need to have like optimize the tools and the servers that you're running with, because it's pretty compute heavy. Um,
Yeah, I agree. So I'm trying to look at my mental notes. What did we not discuss yet as we're nearing the end of the recording?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we haven't discussed yet is that we're obviously looking at like various tools to use in our own sort of like outbound efforts as well. And then one of the tools that we developed is basically like a tool to really help us with our outbound efforts. And then what this like entails, and I'm showing my screen here now, is that it's basically like a very large table, and then the very large table takes in a link and maybe a name as well, but actually name is not really needed. It's more like just a link. And then from that link, it kind of like syncs it back to HubSpot, kind of understanding whether we have like talked to this company or not. And then it's scraping it with scraping ant, and then feeding it into to GPT, and then from that like determining the relevancy of like a lot of like based on a lot of things. And then the end result is basically very similar to what Clay does, that it kind of determines whether we well, first of all, whether we have talked to these people, what's the relationship like, and then second of all, tries to find a connection which is relevant for us, and then based on that, it kind of gets the LinkedIn contact for that connection, and then also gets the email address of that connection. Now, this is all cool, and most of this is doable in Clay. What's not doable in Clay is basically that you have tool which is I mean, it's a very simple tool which we developed, which is something we call like brute force email. What it really does is that a lot of the times you're using the various providers like drop contact and find email and so on and so on, but it will get you, let's say the good ones will get you like, I don't know, 60% like emails found, right? So let's say out of 100 emails, based on where the database is more good or less good, you will find like 60% of the emails. But there's another very easy way to find an email, which is basically try the most common combinations. And there is, maybe 30 different combinations. And even from the 30, there is like 5 that is the most common, right? So what you can then do is to basically just push through all of the different variations. And then from those variations, you will find the email address with like almost 100% time, unless it's something weird, like, whatever, teddy bear at something. So if it follows like a corporate format, you will most likely find it. And so this is something that we came up with, and this is something that doesn't exist in Clay. I mean, we could integrate it with an API call, but it's just much easier and faster this way, tailored to our use case. So this is something that we built actually very recently as well.
And comparing the make or buy there as well. So I understand that you like this more because you can add features versus Clay, but how much effort was it for you to build this?
It was a couple of weeks to put it together. It's more like, it's not like we're constantly working on it. It's just like we're testing it, and if there's like something to show, then we're basically or something to like modify, we're modifying it. And of course, some stuff breaks all the time. I like it better because it is a bit more flexible. What I actually didn't like personally with Clay is that once you if you're targeting a niche that is not a very well like not a niche that is like like online too much, then basically what happens is that you will not find too many contacts on LinkedIn. And then what happens is that there's like a large drop off, right? So you start with a mix of a list of domain names, and then from those domain names there's a large drop off when it comes to finding contacts. From those contacts there's a large drop off when it comes to finding emails. So what will happen is that you add like, let's say 10,000 names, and you will find like 500 email addresses, which is a very bad conversion ratio. And then what happens there is you can't even like go back and modify, because the tables are separate. So you have a separate domain table and a separate contact table. And then I actually wanted to have a view where you are doing everything in one, and then you can see where the gaps are, and then you can fill those gaps yourself, going manually as well if you need to.
I mean, I can definitely relate. So I've felt a couple of limitations with Clay as well, but I also think it's a really good starting point for most people, specifically that are less
Clay is
technical.
amazing for, yeah, especially if you're not a coder, then it's an amazing
Yes.
place to start. If you're a coder, there are more flexible ways to go about it, but the idea behind it is amazing. And it's just everything
They
needs
just
just to
closed
feel
funding, by
right
the
for
way,
you.
160 something million, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Congrats to them.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I could talk for hours, and probably we will offline talk some more. So maybe in closing, so what are the biggest things you would have done differently with your knowledge today, looking back the 6 years, your building journey? So one or two things that you would change in hindsight.
I think it's a lot of it is about like platform choice. So we probably should have started with like NA10 from the get-go. A lot of it was like experimentation, right? So you're like starting with one platform, one provider, and then you're switching, and then so it's much easier to start if you have a very specific tech stack that you're aware of that works. But to be fair, like when I kind of learned how to program, the most popular tech stack was the mean stack. And then by today, like no one actually uses the mean stack, right? So like the the tech stacks are actually changing so fast, and it's very hard
Tell
to
me
predict
about
which
it.
technology. Yeah, so like you could never, like for example Angular JS, I mean today is not like that popular anymore. Same with Vue.js, right? Like React has like basically eaten both of these for like breakfast, right? And so
Yes.
you could have never predicted that. The same with like a lot of like languages that like JavaScript. The popularity of JavaScript, it was kind of something that people could see, but it was not like very obvious, right? So you know it's just very hard to kind of foresee. And then if you pick the wrong technology, and then the support for it like kind of diminishes, then you're then you need to do everything all over again. So
No, I hear you on that. Cool, man. So then, what is there to learn about Budapest? What's your favorite restaurant in Budapest?
good question. Actually, there is one that I've been to very recently. It's one called Architecto Pit Pit, which is located in a very nice old villa in downtown Budapest. So if you're there, you should come and visit. You need to reserve it though, like in advance, because it's too popular. You can just like go there.
And what cuisine
But
do they
yeah,
have?
it's like mostly Spanish. Weirdly enough, it used to be like a place for like the architecture community of like Hungary, and then they created this restaurant in the garden of it, and it's like a very nice like cozy vibe. So yeah.
That sounds really good. Well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for giving us such an inside view into what you guys have been doing at Flashpoint. So I'm definitely a fan of both Flashpoint and you after today. So I think you will have
Thank you.
one more fans out there. So thanks a lot, and hope to see you soon sometime in Budapest.
Yes, let's do that. Thanks,
All
Elon.
right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.